On this week's The Next Interview Show podcast.
It's really easy to destroy trust. It's the
Yeah.
action, it's the absence of actions that were expected. So the people
Great.
well, I expected you to have my back and you didn't. Therefore, they don't trust you anymore. And it's much easier to get people to feel that because somewhere in their life they've experienced it, right?
Sure. Hi, I'm Dolan White. I'm the host of the Next Interview Show podcast, and I want to make an offer to you before we get into the interview here in just a couple of seconds. I want to offer you to go to my website. It's dolanwhite.com/LWC and download a copy of my book. It's called Lead with Confidence, 4 Bold Steps for Empowered Leadership. And in it, there are 4 pillars of empowerment that I talk about that you can apply immediately that may help you in your leadership journey and help you today. Now let's get to our conversation. Hey everybody, welcome to the Next Interview Show podcast. And as the announcer mentioned at the top of the podcast, I'm Dolan. I am the host of the podcast. No surprise there. And today, I'm honored. I've got Greg Kaiser on with me, and thank you, Greg, for being here with me. This is there's a million other things you could be doing on a Tuesday afternoon, and you're going to spend a good half hour, 40 minutes with me or so. So I'm grateful for your time, sir. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you, Dolan. Appreciate it.
Cool. Very good. So I'm excited to have this conversation. This is going to be fun with your background and your expertise. And the things that you work on with people pathing, as we kind of call it. We'll get into people pathing a little bit. But just for those who haven't had an opportunity to meet you, maybe we take the first couple of minutes and just a chance for you to introduce yourself, a little bit about your background, kind of your path to where you are today. And then
Sure.
we'll get into the meat and potatoes and chat a bit.
Well, terrific. Thank you.
Pleasure.
So my background, well, let me start with where I am today.
Okay.
I have a business called Management Mastery, and it's a huge business, though. It's my wife and I.
Awesome.
So prior to that, I had a pretty long career in what you would refer to as the big corporate world.
Sure.
And the story that people seem to get a kick out of is, because you've heard versions of this, I did actually start in the mailroom.
Mm-hmm.
Back when companies still had mailrooms.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Walking from office to office distributing mail.
Yeah.
And so, and I got, it was right place, right time. So over the course of the years, I ended up in an executive level job. And there's a whole bunch of intervening steps that unless people are really into the nits and gnats of logistics and supply chain and manufacturing, I'll skip. But, eventually I had, as I was joking with somebody the other day, I had strategy in my title 4 different times and doing different parts of the business.
Sure.
And I'm like, am I good at this, or is just like nobody else want to do it?
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. Yes. Yeah.
So, then about 15 years ago, I exited the big corporate world and went out and started doing some consulting on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a certain, you do this, there's a certain luxury to that.
Yeah.
That in the confines of the corporate world, you have a different set of drivers.
Yeah.
When you get to go in and focus on an individual client, you can go pretty deep. That's why they bring you in.
Sure.
And I enjoy that. That's one of the things I do enjoy doing. And there's a couple different areas that I focus on. Optimization, process optimization being one of them.
Yeah.
And I don't leave it out there at this fuzzy process optimization level. I take it down to, okay, let's go through your day. Tell me what you physically do. And then we'll draw the value stream map and say, well, if you reallocated your time to this, this, and this, your productivity would go way up. And, the reply that just cracks me up, because I heard it a bunch of times, but I like doing that. Okay. I like fishing. Okay.
Yeah. Exactly.
I don't do it when I go to work.
Oh, that's good. I love that. Yeah. It's funny you mention that because I think there is that propensity, right? We like what we like, and
Yep.
I'm not going to let go of what I like, and I like it because it's comfortable. I know how to do it.
And you're good at it.
Yeah, yeah, and I get kudos, and I get I get all the stuff that comes along with it, and I go home at night and I feel like I did something. I did
Yeah.
because I'm good. I'm good at these things.
Check.
Yeah, exactly. That's perfect. So I think that's a really really good place to start, because I think one of the challenges people have, and particularly managers, leaders. We'll call them. I'm going to lump both those words into one word: managers, leaders. Um, they lose track of moving hinges. Right? What's the value of my time?
Yep.
Right? Which is, what door am I moving today? What am I doing? So when I'm really kind of curious, and I love that exercise that you're talking about. When you're working with someone kind of through that process, and you're saying, because when we think of processes, we can think about SOPs and ISO and
Yep.
standards and show me the piece of paper and all the stuff. When you think about the human process, how do you spend your time? What's the
Oh,
human
those
process?
pesky humans.
Oh my God, it would be so much easier to do this without people, right? Just mail me checks. We're good to go. How do you, what kind of, what's kind of your process going through that as you're taking somebody through that recognition of how they spend their time, what they're doing, and the value of what they do? How do you kind of like spur them to think about that and get off of those moments of comfort?
No, so this is a great question. Since I've talked about it so frequently, my business partner, who happens to be my wife,
Yeah.
is now able to replay this for me. So I put together this little exercise for people. It's called Know Thy Time.
Huh.
Full disclosure, I ripped that off from Peter Drucker.
Perfect.
Okay.
That's a good guy to rip stuff off from, by the way. That's a
Exactly.
good guy.
But there's a little template put together, and you track your time, which drives people nuts, in 15-minute increments.
Mm.
And you do it for 3 weeks. And there's drop down menus, so you categorize your time based on what you're doing.
Sure.
And that varies by the organization and the function you're in. But at the end of 3 weeks, you can click the little macro and get a cool summary. Hey, here's a pie chart. Here's how you spend your time. Now let's dig into this a little bit and talk about that. Oh, gee, you go to 4 hours of meetings a day. Okay, like if the CEO of the company, I kind of get it. That is what they do.
Yeah.
I said, but you're not the CEO of the company, and you're in meetings for 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
And that's the simplest example, because it tends to be pretty egregious.
That's a good example, because we end up in these scenarios, I think, Greg, where it's meetings for the sake of meetings. And
I was working with a company a couple of years back where I was there for about a week, and I'd see the same people in every meeting. And finally I went and talked to the person that brought me in, and I said, you guys have a meeting problem. People love to go to meetings. I said, you know why? Because your executives don't communicate well. The only way they find out what's going on is to go to a lot of meetings.
Right.
I said, you could save a lot of people a lot of times if you would just communicate a little bit more thoughtfully.
Yeah.
Like here's a whole bunch of agendas for meetings. Go through these, distill these things, and say, wow, there's these 8 people that spent 8 hours in meetings. I could send an email that would take me, I don't know, 45 minutes if it was really complicated.
Yeah, yeah.
And put that time back in their calendar, and then they can go off and do the accounting, finance, IT, whatever function they were in stuff.
Sure.
That we actually pay them to be here for.
Right.
And it's that way of looking at it and saying, okay, there's these activities going on. And as you said, people like going to meetings, particularly if you're in a communication-starved environment.
Right.
Then you have the meeting before the meeting, and you have the meeting after the meeting, so you can talk to everybody that's there. Hey, what's going on over here? Hey, what's going on over here?
Yeah. Yes. funny guy. I worked for a gentleman, and every time we'd end the meeting, it ended with, "Okay, let's think about it, sleep on it." And it was like, okay, which meant we were having another 4-hour meeting the next day to talk about what we slept on, and we never ever got to the decision. And
I wouldn't be able to sleep, though.
it became kind of that. I call it the spiral of death. It's kind of like, okay, here we go. We're going back. Apparently, I'm not going to be sleeping. So when you're going through, it's interesting you say that, because I think one of the things that is missing in the process of helping people understand how they're spending their time is kind of that. It almost kind of feels like when you get to that moment and they've got the macro and they've got the time in front of them, got the kind of report where you can explore it. It's kind of a "what the hell are you doing" kind of a moment.
I try not to say it that way.
I would imagine not, but this is just you and me. But yes, no, there's probably a better way to say it. However, it is the kind of that moment where there has to be, an awareness. A light bulb goes off, to use an old analogy, right? And that person kind of says, "Oh." So how does that, when you end up in that conversation, how does that, it's one thing to do the reveal, another to move people this way, right? So how do you, what's the move?
Well, and there's another little graphic that I use, which I ripped off from another person, Rosemary Stewart, who most people have never heard about. I forget who she worked with, one of the big consulting companies, and she wrote a really good book called The Realities of Management.
Oh.
And she talks about, okay, this is the manager's job, and she's got all these things listed that managers do, which you'd be familiar with. Here's the demands on their time, and here's the constraints on their time. So I flip that around and say, here are all the things that you have to do. You have to manage the demands and constraints on your time so that you can do these things that you're paid to do as a manager. Because I was talking to somebody the other day, new in career, let's say, right?
Sure.
And like, I need some time management hacks. I'm like, well, there's 24 hours in a day and there's 7 days in a week. So there's 168 hours in a week. Like, there is no time management hack. Yeah. It's a scheduling and allocation question.
Yeah.
I'm like, you need to go find an industrial engineer somewhere around your company and say, hey, we've got an optimization equation that needs to be run.
Yeah.
And they're they're in the science world.
Yeah.
So they got it. Like, they understood what I was saying. They're like, oh, yeah, it's time allocation question. Oh, okay,
yeah.
And then I took them through. I said, lay out what you do and put it on paper. It's really helpful. Make a pie chart out of it, because then your mind can process that shape.
Sure.
And then you allocate time. And then when you get to the rubs, then it's time to go to the people you work with and say, hey, in my 50, 60-hour work week, I have certain constraints. Here are things that won't get done unless we make some trade-off decisions. What do you want to trade off? Those tend to be much healthier conversations, because someone will say, that's really important. I will take it.
Right.
Or the person's manager, supervisor, whatever it is, will say, no, you need to prioritize C over B. Here's why, but these things.
Sure.
And it just makes it a very productive, agenda-driven discussion versus, I'm so busy. Well, everybody's busy. Of course you're so busy.
Right. No, I think that's really powerful. So I would suggest, if you're, leader, manager listening to this, that's a really powerful point. I mean, one of the things I think out of that is we have a tendency to do, I'm been guilty of this in my career. We have a tendency not to say no, and by not weighing the meaning of saying yes, and not ending up in that negotiation around what are my constraints and what am I going to give up if I say yes.
Yes, that is the key question. If I say yes to this, I've just said no to something else. I may not know it for a day or two.
Right. It's funny you mention it, because I think then in that scenario, you end up this is, another Dolan colloquialism, I suppose. You end up cooking that employee because now you've got somebody who's saying yes and their day goes from 7 hours to 9 hours. I'd like to have I've never had a 7 hour. Matter of fact, I don't know why I said I should pick 7. They would go to, it goes from that to 9 to 10 to 11 because you've said yes, yes, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. And you get to the very end of all of that. And sooner or later you come home and your family says, hey, we're not seeing you. You're not focused. There's an impact there's no such thing as work-life balance. I firmly believe there's only life. So you come home and there is, you're out of balance, right? So there's a price you pay on the other side and a price you pay on your career side. The other thing I think that's really important in there is, and I would love to hear your tips on this. So when you're in that moment and you've thought through the prioritization, the cost of saying yes, you said something that's really important in there, Greg, and that is when people have to go negotiate that, right? Because there's somebody here, right, in an organization that's stuff's coming this way and stuff's going this way, and you're in the middle and you're trying to figure out how am I spending my day and what am I doing? This person understands priorities from a different lens than you do, as well as this person here, the forklift guy, right? He's going to understand different priorities. So when you're going through that, I think a lot of people are afraid to have those conversations where they say, hey, I need your insight on this prioritization thing. Isn't it aligned? Am I in line with what we're thinking about what priorities are? How would you, how do you suggest that person says, how do they go have those conversations? How do they get that clarity?
Yeah, so this is interesting because I manage managers at all different levels.
Yeah.
And when you first make that jump to where you're a manager of managers, that's a hard job, and it's hard to teach people, hey, part of your job now is thinking. Thinking equals work for you. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to go have the conversation you're describing, it would require you to sit down and very clearly lay out. And this is also part of the way my brain works, a series of if-then statements.
Sure.
If this, then that. If this, then that. If this, then that. And then at least you can go in and have a good conversation and say, okay, we've got to make some prioritization trade-off decisions. As I view it, here are the components that we should be talking about. How do you see this? And then they may end up doing some juggling for you, depending if they're a level above. If they're a level below you, it'll be completely different. It would be really helpful to talk to a level down and a level up and maybe some of your functional peers.
Sure.
And so you go into that conversation really well prepped. I haven't seen people who don't prep well for meetings. So the phrase I'm familiar with is, I'm just going to wing it. No, you're in a manager's job. It's a hard job. You have to sit and think about what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's just how I've seen it work. If you can train people, coach them, part of your job is to think. And particularly when you're at the manager levels, a lot of what you're dealing with is conceptual. You're not breaking rocks anymore.
Right.
You're probably not spending 3 hours a day grinding spreadsheets.
Right.
If that's the appropriate thing for whatever field you're in. If you're in marketing, you're not spending 3 hours a day trying to come up with brand image questions and things like that.
Sure.
You're managing concepts, and you have other people that do that slightly down level of work.
Right.
They could be grinding spreadsheets for 3 hours a day, but it's appropriate to their role.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to teach people, particularly when you first make the transition, because it's what we chatted about before. You want to hang on to these things that you're good at doing. And my personal example is I love working in spreadsheets. I'm a data hound. I love working in spreadsheets.
Yes.
And I finally got to a level, and I went to a meeting, and I'm showing this to the guy that's a couple levels above, and he's like, oh, where'd you get that? That's really cool. I'm like, oh, I did it. And he's like, maybe nobody told you this. He's like, at your level, we don't pay you to work in spreadsheets. He's like, would you get somebody on your team and train them how to do this? Yes, I will do that.
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha.
That's really helpful direct feedback.
Oh my. Yeah. I just raised my hand. Hi, I'm Dolan. I've done that before. Yes. Oh yeah. Goodness gracious. Yeah. No, it's interesting because I do think that's so this kind of opens up a kind of I don't want to call it a can of worms, but a line of conversation. And that is, I think that I'm very interested in your perspective because this is what you do. You help people move in their career, right? As they grow through their career. You're an expert at this. And I'll use that word till you prove me wrong. So as people are
very generous of you. Thank you.
There you go. My pleasure. As people are as people are growing through their career, you've touched on manager of managers, manager of business, blah, blah, blah. There's all the stuff that kind of goes through that. This is bigger than a half-hour conversation. But I'm really kind of curious, Greg, about your insights about as people are on that trajectory, because we should always be growing. That should be something we're focused on. Every day we're growing. And people are going through that. There's points of mastery, I think, that people need to attain across each level. And probably a 15-pound question, which is just kind of your thinking around as you're on that trajectory. What are you focused on? What should you be leaning in on to get good at, master, better at, master as you're on that, as you're on that growth plan?
Yeah, so I'll take this broadly.
Good.
Since it's a 15-pound question, I wouldn't know any other way to attack it.
Yeah.
So think about a layered cake with 4 layers. Sitting at the top of it, you have strategy. Okay, there's an executive group that you don't really do strategy, you develop strategy, but then they develop a strategy and they hand it off to the next level down, which we'll call those middle level managers.
Okay.
And they do tactical planning. Then they hand it to the next level down of managers. These are the people that manage things. They do operational level planning, and the vast majority of an organization executes against these operational plans.
Mm-hmm.
It's really helpful if people understand where they fit in that 4-layer cake, because it tells them the things that they need to focus on. If you're sitting up at the executive level,
sure,
it's pretty important that you have broad business environment experience. You need to know what's going on in your industry and in the haloed adjacent industries.
Right.
If you're down in that mid-manager to functional manager level, transactions are really important. You do transactional work, and some people don't like the way that sounds. I'm like, well, okay, let's talk about the things that you do.
Right.
Those are transactional in nature. If you're a mid-level manager, high mid-level manager, you're doing some strategy work, but it's still not your principal focus.
Right.
So if you can get people to that level of understanding, we're starting with strategy, but eventually we're getting down to execution, which is where the supermajority of people in any organization reside. Okay, now let's think about what skill sets you need to do to translate from level to level. So when it gets to the execution level, it works. Most strategies fail because they're not executed, not because they weren't good, in scare quotes, right? Good strategies.
It's a great
They're just not well executed. So then you can go in and start picking that apart and say, well, were they poorly communicated? Were they inconsistently communicated? Was there a breakdown on one of those levels where the translation didn't happen?
Mm-hmm.
Because let's say you're on a shop floor somewhere, to use a manufacturing example.
Sure.
You should have some understanding of what the company's strategy is.
Right.
So when you go to work, you understand, hey, this thing I do, this is how it contributes, and you'll be a heck of a lot more motivated. than just going in and saying, yeah, I drive a forklift for 8 hours a day and I'm expected to move 700 units an hour for for 8 hours
Yeah,
a
my
day.
metric. Yes. Yeah.
It's much more helpful to say, no, I'm part of a $5 billion company and this is how I contribute to that. And you see people get the like shoulders back, chest out, like, hey, I'm part of something big. And that's what people want to know
Sure.
versus the phrase that I heard it a million times, that the people that describe themselves, I'm just a cog in a wheel. Somewhere there was a real bad communication breakdown that you ended up feeling like that.
Oh my. Yeah. Yeah. I've heard that before in my career. Yes. Yeah, I just work.
Yeah.
I just work here. Talk to that guy over there. That guy over there knows. Go talk to him. He knows. Yeah. It's interesting. No, I think there's there's a lot to unpack in that. Even down to that. So that person driving the forklift, right? I think in a lot of cases, to your point, what happens is can be a tendency in an organization based on pressures, right, that occur, right? And there's lots of different pressures that can occur inside any organization to have the message delivered down with just do it.
Yeah.
Just go do it. In which I think a lot of times can be the sin of a person, and I'll use the word sin, I guess, is probably a good description of it. The person who is just becoming a new manager, who's on there, and they're a manager of a handful of people, never been a manager before, which we love those people. We want to give them the kind of love and kudos they deserve because they've earned that trust. Give them a try.
Yep.
So when they're in that spot, one thing we talked a little bit about kind of pre-show was, as people are growing through their career, right, and they're going from line of business. I'm the forklift guy. I'm the line of business person, and now they're becoming a manager of some people, and then they're a manager of managers. That new person who's learning about managing people, who can misinterpret strategy as go get stuff done, GSD, get stuff done.
Yeah.
Right. They misinterpret that. What kind of advice would you have, or insights do you have around from in an organization? Because I love your saying. I'm going to steal it, by the way. It's just candidly, clearly, publicly recorded around strategies can be great, but most failures, and I'm with you 100%, occur because they're not executed, and they're not executed because of blah blah blah, bunch of reasons, right? So when that person is now that manager, that first time manager, what advice do you have for that individual to help study, balance that downward pressure with the get stuff done that's in their mind that they may be misinterpreting?
Yeah. So people process things through stories.
Mm-hmm.
So let me tell you a quick story that ties together this time constraint question and this translation of strategy through the organization.
Great.
So I'm managing a pretty big group. It's like 100 and some people. So I had managers reporting to me who had people doing work.
Yeah.
And it was a high demand. Our work output was a high demand product. And these the people that were at the delivery end were just like when you said, they went from 9 hours to 10 hours to 11 hours.
Yeah.
And so their managers are coming back to me and they're complaining, rightly so. Like, hey, my people are getting abused. Everybody loves what they're doing. I said, okay, we're going to have a meeting. Here's the agenda. Here's our work product. Here's why we do it. And we're going to put together a set of talking points because the national sales meeting's coming up next week and we're all going to it. Every one of your people is going to have these talking points. And when they start talking to their internal clients, they're going to say, look, here's the high value work we do, and we can demonstrate that this is higher value than some other things you're asking us to do.
Mm-hmm.
We're not doing these things anymore. So that we can give you more of the high value work. And I could take you into the widgets of what the discussion was, but it's that thought process that You are literally handing them a piece of paper and saying, this is what we do. This is why we do it. And this is the value to the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And it made the conversations a lot easier because they're like, well, of course I want you to do the most valuable thing. That's what I want you spending your time on. Who's telling you to do something different? Like, you?
Yeah.
So at the end of the week, I got my guys back together. I'm like, guys and women. And I said, okay, let's scorecard this. Did you talk to these people? Yes. How many of these things did you cover? Well, the one guy that worked for me, God bless him, he was a pretty obsessive fella.
Sure.
He had made his own chart with names on it and check boxes.
Oh, my. Yes. Okay, good.
Everybody that worked for him had to go to talk to all these different people and deliver all these little checks.
Oh, my.
I'm like, that is taking it to the next level. I love you.
Yeah, no kidding. And can I have a copy of that, please? There you go. Yeah. No,
but it's that thought process. Like, you got to boil this stuff down that people have something to work with. So the upfront part was, okay, we got to sit down and do the work of putting this list together. And you can have a bunch of arguments about what's more valuable than not.
Sure.
Which, of course, we did.
Sure.
But when you finally settled on something, say, no, this is go forth and talk to people about this and sell them on the value of the work that's being produced. Nobody's going to say, well, of course I want more or less valuable work. And it just made the conversations a lot easier to have because some of these people were nervous, right?
Right.
If you're at a lower level and people are making a lot of demands on your time, you feel good about it. You're important.
Right.
And now we're saying, you got a time allocation problem. We need to shift some of that time over here.
Right.
And they were nervous about it. Well, they're going to get mad at me because I've been doing this for them for 6 months a year.
Great point.
I'm like, no, just send them to me. That's my job.
Right.
They can get mad at me and they'll yell at me and okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that because I think there is a fear component that's in that, right? To your point, right? And we're and from early childhood up, it's a punitive thing, right? I'm going to get an A, B, C, D, F in school. I don't know what happened to E, but I'm getting an A, B, C, D, F, right? I never got E's. So there's that punitive aspect around kind of when you, in its simplest form. And I think a lot of times, and I think it permeates all organizations at all levels. Fear is it's part of human nature.
Oh, yeah. Fear, anxiety, whichever word you want to put around it, anxiety is just a fancy form of fear.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And anxiety is when you don't want to tell people I'm afraid. Yeah, I have anxiety. There you go. But it's interesting because I do think that a lot of times from an organization's perspective, that fear component is where stacking occurs. I'm afraid to tell you that, hey, this is, if I do this, I can't go do these other things. Therefore, I'm going to do those other things plus this. And by the way, I can only do them halfway. You're going to use a different word, halfway, because this is a PG-13 podcast. So halfway because I'm now got to split my time and I have other things pressing on me. And I think that's a big component. So as that manager comes in and I think the boundary behind that is building trust. And you just said it. And I love the way you said it, Greg, is, hey, look, if they're mad, send them to me.
Right. That's my job.
Yeah, they can put teeth marks on me they can't eat me. They can put teeth marks on me. But I like that because I think that instills trust. In its most common form, it is, I got your back.
That's the phrase I was thinking of. People like that. Like, oh, I got to go have this tough conversation. I wonder if my manager's going to back me up.
Yeah.
They should know that. You should have talked to them about that already.
But I think that's where a lot of gaps occur, and that's a really important thing. Maybe take a couple of minutes just on this, and then we'll kind of wind down a little bit. But I'm keeping my promise. We're not staying to 30 minutes. We're going on a little bit. So it's really important what you said, and it's kind of a mic drop thing for me. I love that phrase, being a musician. It's a mic drop. It's that from a communication perspective, it's something you should have said, should have told them. There should be a mutual agreement that says, hey, I've got your back. I got you. I'm there. And if you mess up, I'm there. We'll figure it out. You can't crash the company. We'll figure it out. So from the managers, people kind of go through that. How do you recommend, and there's conversations and building trust becomes pretty consistent regardless of level, because trust is a single player game. So
yes.
So how do you, what suggestions do you give your clients when you're talking about, hey, I see a misalignment in trust here. They're not doing these things because they don't know that you trust them, or maybe you don't trust them. How do you help people kind of bridge that?
Yeah, so this is the way to explain it that most people viscerally understand.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to build trust because that's the outcome of actions that people can observe.
Mm-hmm.
It's really easy to destroy trust.
Mm. Yeah.
It's the action. It's the absence of actions that were expected. So people are like, well, I expected you to have my back and you didn't. Therefore, they don't trust you anymore.
Mm.
And it's much easier to get people to feel that because somewhere in their life they've experienced it, right?
Sure.
They're like, oh yeah, I don't want to be in that I'm not trusted group.
Yeah,
That has other weird implications.
Yes.
So one of the ways when I was training managers how to do this, I was pretty adamant about this. I met with, it didn't matter what level I was, finally got to, I met with every one of my people once a week and did a face-to-face one-on-one.
Sure.
That had an agenda that was circulated beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
So when they came in, it wasn't, hey, what are you working on? That to me is like the most worthless meeting. I'm like, no, I know what you're working on, and this is what I want to talk about, and let's elevate this a little bit.
Sure.
I split it up into, let's talk about people first.
Right.
That's how work gets done. Then we're going to talk about the processes you're using to get that work done through people. And the very last thing we're going to talk about is your performance. How is that marriage of people and processes working out? If it's over delivering, that's fabulous. Keep doing more of that. If it's under delivering a little bit, let's the two of us sit here and figure it out, because we probably can figure it out. I said, if you have that meeting with your people every week, they're super clear on what you expect, but they also know you're going to help them when they hit these inevitable obstacles, that you're not just going to say, well, you go figure that out. Well, that's not really managing. I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah.
You go figure it out is not like super helpful.
No.
I mean, maybe if they're struggling to like figure out a macro in Excel, you could say, hey, go on to YouTube and like just figure it out. Okay. I don't have time to explain it to you.
Sure.
But if they're dealing with organizational dynamics that they've never dealt with before, hey, look, I get this guy over in procurement and he's slow walking this and this is happening over here. And like, okay, let's break this down. How do you communicate to this group of people? How do you communicate to this group of people? How do you communicate a deadline and what the implications of that deadline are? Blah, 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 blah. And they'll start saying, "Oh, okay. Well, I didn't do that." I'm like, okay, you just go back and do it tomorrow.
Right.
It's not that hard.
Yeah. I like it. Yeah. I didn't do it. Yeah. Just go do it. Do it. Go back. Try again.
Yeah. Now, the tough ones are that person doesn't like me. That's a real thing.
That is a real thing.
Like, we don't work well together.
That is a real thing.
Yeah, that's a difficult one to deal with.
Yeah.
That's where, and I view that as my obligation as a manager to like seek that person out and say, things don't seem to be working out too well here. Talk me through this.
Yes.
And you might find out your person's doing something super irritating that you could probably easily correct.
Yes.
Or they just don't like them.
Yeah.
Well, that's harder to fix.
That is and both those dynamics, and in both those dynamics, if you don't address them, they get worse over time. It gets
Yep.
it's that mountain, it's that molehill to mountain very quickly. Very, very quickly in an organization. But I like that because I do think one of those things that's very important inside of a skill that managers need to develop, I think, at any level, is that ability to be candid and
Yep.
candid without harm.
That to me is the key part, because my wife and I were just talking about this. She's involved in some other business too.
Sure.
And she said somebody started a conversation with, well, I'm just being honest here. And I'm like, Kathleen, I'm just going to be honest here. Typically, when you hear that phrase, somebody's getting ready to insult you. That's exactly what happened. I'm like, yeah, when somebody says that, they're getting ready to be really rude.
I'll tell you, Greg, one of my favorite things is when somebody says, well, to be honest, I go, wait. So have you been dishonest up until now? Are we now doing honesty? Help me understand what just happened here. So, all right. So the, goodness gracious, I can't trying to figure an elegant way, man. This has been I really enjoyed this conversation. Really enjoyed the conversation.
An occupational hazard when you talk to me, Dolan.
Yeah.
I'm interested in everything.
Yeah.
So.
It's all good. So I think it's one of the things I think that leaders, managers neglect is an acknowledgement that they can't do things alone. In their careers, leaders, managers need to go find people they can trust, people they can work with, people that will help them see things they cannot see.
Yes.
Because after, the old saying about, after you've been drinking the Kool-Aid for a long time, you only see the color of the Kool-Aid you've been drinking. So, and if it's grape, you got purple. That's all you got. So when you're out working with clients, so I guess the first question is a little bit about your business is what kind of clients do you like to work with? Because we're not for everybody. When we go talk to people, there's clients I say, you got to feel like I'm a fit, and I got to feel like you're a fit. Because if that's not reciprocal, it's going to be busted. And I'm still going to cash your checks. So,
yeah.
What kind of client, where in the life cycle of the client? Because it's, this is industry agnostic.
No, that's a great question, though. Yeah. So where in the life cycle? I'll start there and step it through a little bit.
Yeah.
Not startups. Because I had a little bit of experience with startups, and their mindset of move fast and break things and burn through investor cash is, I understand it at some level, but it's really hard for me to work with. Like, hey, these people that put that cash in were expecting a return on that cash, and you just burnt through it all. And now you're going back and asking for more. If you came back and asked for me more, I'd say, what'd you do with the money I gave you?
Right.
That does not play well with startups because it's just not their mindset.
Sure.
So I don't fit well in that. Possibly at their executive level where you're talking to them about, okay, if you're a manager, these are the things that every manager does, and you're going to need to start instituting some of these things throughout your organization. In startup mode, they're so driven by volume and revenue and all the other measures that they use for startup success.
Right.
My sweet spot for clients is more, they're established, they have a business, and they've now gotten to the point where some things aren't working, but they're having a hard time diagnosing it themselves. For the Kool-Aid analogy that you use, they're just too close to it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and this is the luxury of coming in from the outside. You can sit in, 2, 3, 4 days worth of meetings and watch people interact and say, okay, let's talk about these 3 things. You have a real demand translation problem. Your salespeople are going out and selling a lot of stuff, but you're not delivering it.
Right.
So don't yell at the salespeople. Let's go talk to the people that are responsible for delivering it and find out why they're not, because I'm sure they'd love to.
Sure.
And it's those kind of things like, no, like our sales aren't high enough. Our sales aren't. Well, no, they created the demand. You didn't fulfill it. That's a different problem.
Yeah.
Than our sales aren't high enough.
Yeah.
So it's that stage of company where they've gotten mature enough, let's call it, that they've now run into the limitations of maybe what their experience set is. And size-wise, a $250,000 company probably shouldn't be hiring me anyway.
Sure.
And once they get above $1 billion, maybe a little bit north of that, they're almost too big and too complicated. So the sweet spot would be if you get someone that's, I don't know, 400 million up to somewhere close to $1 billion in revenue.
Mm-hmm.
They have the same problems as a $20 billion company. They just have less people around to deal with
Sure.
it.
Yeah. True. Yeah, very true. Very good. So I think so one thing I will encourage those listening to the podcast. So in the podcast notes will be website, all the information on how to contact you. Because if you're listening to the podcast, please don't grab a pencil to write any of this stuff down right now. We want you to get to wherever destination you're going, get there in one piece. No sound of crunching metal. But I want to make sure to do check the podcast notes, and they'll be conspicuously in there so that's easy to find, and some support links and some don't, but they'll all be there. So do that. I do. One of the things I've really enjoyed about the conversation is as we've kind of unpacked a lot of this stuff, Greg, there is an art to coaching a client.
Yep.
When you're able to coach at multiple levels of the organization. I've met a lot of folks who go, well, I only coach CEOs. And it's like, that's cool. If that's what you do, that's what you do. But organizations can be deep and wide.
Yes.
And unless you speak that language across the body of the organization because it's different languages. To your point, I love your idea around if you're at this level in the company, what are the things you need to focus on? What are the things you do?
What are your key success metrics at your level?
Right. And recognize that.
The guy driving a forklift, you ain't doing strategy.
Yep.
You're not developing strategy.
Yeah. So I would my comment around all of that is, look, when you're considering, and there's reasons why as leaders listening to this podcast, managers listening to this podcast, you want to go out and engage. You want to go out and engage and get some help, but you want to make sure you're engaged with people who can speak multiple languages, multiple tiers, who understand the obligations of each of those and and the interplay. The widget that you're building is important, but the business supersedes that. The laws of business remain relatively consistent. People are people.
Yep.
So I want to encourage the audience to come by that. That's a heartfelt recommendation. I want the audience to come find you. And the last thing I want them to do is on my Kindle is your book, and right over your left shoulder is your book. It's right here.
Back up there.
Back over there. So I will encourage you, and it'll also be in the show notes, but it's called Management Rescue. You're promoted, now what? Which is that OS moment. I think a lot of people go, oh, okay. I said yes. But dear, it's exactly, and the hair's pinned back and they're hanging on. Yeah. So now what? So I would encourage you to go pick up a copy of Greg's book and read his book. On that note, I am going to once again. I'm going to extend it just a moment of gratitude to you, Greg, for taking time.
Oh, thank you, Bill, and I appreciate it. I always enjoy talking to you. They're fun conversations.
Yeah, thank you for coming and hanging out with me. And this has been a really, really, really good conversation. I've enjoyed this a lot. if you're listening to the podcast, do give it a like, a share, and a follow. Do all those guys. Subscribe. Depends upon the platform that you're on. It's on every platform known to God and man out there. Please do do that, and that's great. It has nothing to do with vanity. It has to do with an algorithm that runs in the background that allows the podcast to be visible. The reason why the podcast has got to be visible, if you know a manager, leader, and a person who has been offered a manager's job and is thinking about taking the job or shifting their career, share this podcast with them. Help them be better at what they do. There's a lot of chewy nougat in this podcast around lessons and things they can do to be better in their jobs, better in their lives, better with their families, all because all of that stuff hooks together.
You've been listening to The Next Interview. For more information about today's guest, be sure to visit the show notes. If you enjoyed the show, give us a follow and be sure to join us here on The Next Interview.